it's quite a fairly diverse field at the moment, but nonetheless, if you make it through to the last two, that's two old Etonians who both went to Balliol College, Oxford in the last two. It's hardly diverse. Would the country not be better off choosing, for instance, a Pakistani bus driver's son?
I think you're right to point to that. I would say, by all means, focus on the 5 years that I spent at school, but also look at the 5 years that I spent in Afghanistan, look at the 5 years I spent serving my country in Iraq and in the Balkans, and let's look at me overall.
So your biggest idea in terms of the great big Brexit conundrum facing the country is a citizens' assembly. This would be chosen sort of randomly by poll. Just explain to us exactly how it would work.
So 2 stages. First thing is to get Parliament to try to get Brexit through. In the end, we live in a parliamentary democracy, so we have to begin by convening Parliament, and if I were lucky enough to be elected as leader, I would come in with a mandate from the Conservative Party members, the associations of the country, and I could make a different request to Conservative members than the Prime Minister perhaps was able to in the past, and I would hope also the results of the European elections would make members of Parliament realise that we need to get Brexit done and get that deal passed. But if it failed, the plan B, the fallback, would be to go to a citizens' assembly. So that would be like a jury, selected very scientifically across the country, whittled down to be representative of the country as a whole, give them 3 weeks to go through the details of it, and then make recommendations.
This would be chosen by rote, effectively. So if somebody watching this programme right now has to realise that if Rory Stewart makes it all the way through and becomes Prime Minister, they may get a phone call in late August, early September saying, terribly sorry, give up what you're doing, your job is now to come and sort out Brexit for us. That seems like passing the buck.
Much sooner than that is the first thing, that I'd want to get this done soon, so I'd hope they'd get the phone call in late July, and it would work like this. You would go to select randomly from the electoral register 50,000 people. You would then, as you say, write or phone them to check who's available. And then you'd use a polling company to make sure they were representative of the country, North against South, women against men, Brexit against no-Brexit. And the reason to do it is to release the pressure from Parliament. Parliament is gridlocked and stuck. I would give Parliament another go, and I would say to Parliament, this is the last chance saloon, get it done. But if you're not going to get it done, let us have the Citizens' Assembly, which is what they did in Ireland on abortion, and actually really worked.
How long did it take the Irish Citizens' Assembly to come to a decision?
Longer. So they sat much longer, but they only sat at weekends, and I think they didn't sit on every weekend. I believe, having sat down with the constitutional experts at UCL, talked to people involved in the Irish Assembly, we can get this done in a matter of weeks. And I would only be doing it as the fallback. I want Parliament to do it, and I want to deliver it as soon as possible.
I just put it to you that there really isn't the time for this. We have a small number of months before October, 3 months before October. In October, by which time the EU is back and proper negotiations start, you have just 3 weeks to come to a conclusion. There is no way that you're going to be able to do this before the end of October.
2 things. Firstly, there is no new negotiation with Europe. Anybody who's pushing for that is pushing for delay. We're still going to be stuck in Europe for years to come. They think they're going to get a new negotiator out of Europe. And I've said again and again, I'm not going back to Europe to negotiate. Secondly, we live in a parliamentary democracy. There's only one route through this, which is to get it through Parliament. So I would start with Parliament, and if I couldn't get it through on the first stab with Parliament, you'd go to the Citizens' Assembly and then back with the recommendations to Parliament. We've got to unlock Parliament.
So what do you do if your Citizens' Assembly recommends either leaving with no deal or says we must have a second referendum? 2 things you said you're completely opposed to.
Well, firstly, I think it's very unlikely because the Citizens' Assembly would be chosen.
They're not unlikely because you're looking at all of the polling at the moment. The consensual centre ground has vanished on this, and actually the 2 most popular options by far are no deal or remain via a referendum.
So why am I saying it's unlikely? It's because the country and the Assembly would be split 52% Brexit, 48% Remain. It's extremely unlikely that they would agree on one of the extreme options. Extremely unlikely they would agree on no deal or a second referendum. It is more likely, given the experience of these assemblies all around the world, is that they would come to a compromise. If they did, and I'm prepared to accept there's a possibility.
They might well not, yes.
There's a possibility they might. Parliament is sovereign. So if they make a recommendation to Parliament that is completely unacceptable to Parliament, then it won't go through. And then what is the worst case scenario, Andrew? I would have wasted a few weeks of your time, and we would have to go back to Parliament again. But in the end,
as Prime Minister, we'd be exactly where we are. You're a very, very erudite, clever guy, but this sounds to me like a gimmick, and quite an unsuccessful gimmick at that.
It was very successful in Ireland with an issue of abortion, which was very polarising and divisive, because it gets people into the details. In this case,
you're Prime Minister, you're in charge, and if this Assembly produces something that you agree with, then yes, you use that to put pressure on Parliament to try and get a result. But if they disagree, you just ignore them.
The important thing is we live in a parliamentary democracy. I'm campaigning against candidates who are pretending we're living in the United States and we're going for presidential politics where some big man just says this is going to happen. The question to people who are saying that, my opponents who are not talking about Parliament, is how are they going to get it done? How are they going to negotiate some different deal with Europe? How are they going to get no deal through Parliament? We live in a parliamentary democracy, and what I have to do is work with people. I need 45 more votes. That's what it comes down to.
You have said all the way through, I am the compromise candidate.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe in compromise, vote for me.
Mm-hmm.
In that spirit, can I ask you what your view is of membership of the single market and the customs union?
I personally think single market would be a big mistake because I believe that people who voted for Brexit, at the very minimum, would want not to have control over immigration.
Customs union?
If what you mean by that is an arrangement where we have zero tariffs, zero quota access to European markets in which we can sell British cars in, and if we can get that without regulations over the City of London and without immigration coming to Britain and leaving all the institutions of the European Union, of course, I think that would be a good thing for the British economy.
So you'd be happy with the customs union, but you'd want it without the immigration aspect?
I don't want a customs union in the sense that Turkey has a customs union. What I want, actually, is there in the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement. I want frictionless trade. I want the thing that 270 MPs voted for, and we need to get 45 more on board. And I know this feels terrible to people because they've seen that defeated again and again, but it is the quickest, the most constitutional, the most legitimate way of getting it done, and the other candidates who are promising what they can't deliver are going to let people down terribly. So if I'm lucky enough to win this race, I will at least have been honest with people from the beginning. That it's difficult, that there are no easy solutions to Brexit. If there were, it would have been done already. But at least with me, I'm not wasting your time pretending I'm getting a new negotiation with Europe.
Let me push you on the frankness point, because one of the things you've said very clearly in this studio that you would legislate against no deal. Now, as soon as the EU hears that, the pressure comes off. If they're really scared of no deal, big if, and you've taken it off the table, then there'll be another delay, and another delay, and another delay, and Brexit will not happen.
The big if is the point. They're not scared of it because it's not a credible threat. The European Union knows that no deal cannot get through Parliament. So in a negotiation, I've spent a lot of time negotiating. I started as a diplomat at the age of 22. You make threats that are credible and that help your negotiation. But if your threat is something you can't deliver, and if it's something that's going to damage both your economy and the European economy, it doesn't help you in the negotiation.
So the threat has gone. In effect, you are the Remain candidate in this, aren't you?
Absolutely not.
I don't see how you get us out. I just haven't heard how you get us out.
All the institutions of the European Union through Parliament, Andrew. It's the only way that anyone can get us out. All these other people are just saying, I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to shout, give me a deal. And they're not telling you how to do it. So I am the only candidate who can get us out. I'm the only candidate who can get us out quickly because I'm the only candidate who has noticed two facts. Number one, Europe is not offering a second deal. And number two, I'm going to take it through Parliament. And those are the two truths, and it's the quickest way of doing it.